Welcome to Unscripted episode 5. We've done 5 episodes of season 2 already.
Well, technically this is the 5th, but yes.
Yes. Oh, this is
number 5.
welcome to episode 5.
Yes.
We are wrapping up our discussion, I believe, on meaningful community. So we've walked through what it means to have meaningful community. I thought that last week was really helpful. At least for me, it's nice to be able to kind of think things individually and then talk them out about, what does it look like to have good friendships?
Right.
And like, how can we cultivate those things? How can we bring those things up? How can we grow those things better? Because I think that's a struggle for many of us is like, I've got a lot of superficial friends, or I've got one really, really good friend since childhood that I've had, and I have struggles moving forward from just that one friendship to other friendships.
Right. And how do I build that more deeply? And maybe even have more than one.
Yeah. There's a joke I heard that was like, Jesus did a whole bunch of miracles, the 5,000, feeding the 5,000 and stuff. But the real miracle was having 12 friends in his 30s. Yeah. I was like, man, if that is not the most real statement.
Yeah, that's probably true though, man. I hadn't even thought about that, but that's,
yeah.
I know that's a joke, but I'm like, well, there's some truth to that.
I mean, for real. I've got a couple of good close friends and stuff, but man, does it take being the son of God to create those kinds of friendship?
It takes some level of divinity.
Yeah, there's
to make that
miraculous work that happens for us to achieve these things.
Yeah.
So today we're kind of taking the negative approach. So last week was, what does it look like to have good friendships and cultivate those things? Today it's like, how do we weed out unhealthy friendships?
Right.
Or,
well, to even recognize that you have an unhealthy friendship in the first place. And I see this, I know you do, because you're still in the throes of youth ministry and working with teenagers and stuff. But I know in my youth ministry days for sure, but I don't want to limit it to just teenagers because adults struggle with it too. But I remember my youth ministry days, there would be people that like you could just watch. You could watch how when they were in their circle of friends, how they were being treated, and you're just going, that is so bad for you. Like, you know what I'm saying?
But they stay.
Yeah.
Right.
And you can't really say anything because you don't want to like be telling what to do, but you can see it and go, boy, you really need to, walk away from that group of people. But even if you bring it up, we get defensive. If somebody told me like, hey, you probably shouldn't be friends with Brandon, I would be like really kind of defensive at first. Tell me why.
Yeah, until you said. Yeah.
But we are that way though, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not just about, and it's not just even about being protective of those friendships of that particular person. Like somebody else is criticizing my friendship, my relationship. I want to be protective of them. But it's also like, it's a criticism in a way. Because what are you saying about me that I can't pick a healthy relationship? And you may have the best intentions in mind, but I'm going to get defensive. Like you're saying that I can't pick good friendships or that I can't recognize when I'm in a healthy relationship. And that's not the case, but that's what it feels like.
Yeah. And we can for sure get defensive with those things.
Oh my gosh.
I think that's the response to just about any kind of criticism. Man, you say, I don't know about you. Are you good at taking criticism?
I don't think anybody's great at it.
Right.
Right? It probably, I don't want to, we're going to go down a different path than what we're supposed to talk about, but it probably depends on who it comes from, first of all.
Yeah.
Who's doing the criticizing. And then also how it's approached. But yeah, I don't think anybody's like, oh man, awesome. Please tell me more about how I'm falling short. I don't think anybody's that way.
Yeah. And I think if somebody's doing that, it's not like you, to go back to that example, it's not like you said, those people are negative in my life. And actually, I would like to have some of that. I would like to draw from some of that,
Yeah.
It could be the relationships that you don't even realize are negative until you start seeing, or other people start seeing some effects. I know in dating relationships, I had heard some really good advice one time that's like, man, if you are like on an island, we'll talk about this in a moment, but if you're like on an island and the other person has kind of put you guys on an island and you guys are the only people that think that the relationship is good or the friendship is good, and everybody's like, man, I really don't know about this. Be like, man, you don't know.
Yeah.
And you two are the only people that are for the relationship or the friendship. That should be a woo, 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 woo. Hey,
red flags. Yeah.
So kind of on that, what are some of those things? And I think what we kind of want to accomplish, which it's all unscripted, obviously, but we want to accomplish is like, how can I see and recognize some of those?
Right.
Because like you said, you may not even realize that you're in a friendship that is sucking you dry.
Right.
Until somebody brings it up.
Yeah.
And until you take an honest look, or somebody's able to like say, hey man, I just noticed these things. What's really going on? Is there something I can do to help? So to recognize that, but to do more so, which is I think what you want to do a little bit more of, like, okay, now what do we do once I recognize those things are there?
Right. And I will say that I want you to go with like just the character traits, but I think also some of us, we find ourselves in these relationships, maybe more often than not, because that's all we've ever had modeled for us, and that's all we've ever experienced, and we don't know any different. And it's not, like, we don't even recognize that this friendship is unhealthy, that this dating relationship is unhealthy, that this marriage relationship is unhealthy, because I don't know any different. This is all I've ever known is, conflict and chaos and manipulation, whatever. That's my norm.
Yeah.
So for sometimes it's, you can tell me like, you're in an unhealthy relationship. No, I'm not. I'm like, this is all I've ever known.
This is the archetypical relationship of everything that I see.
Right.
So how could that possibly be wrong?
Right.
And so it could be a paradigm shift for some of us.
For sure.
Of us being able to really change our mindset and think like, man, like what's really valuable, and what are the things that are actually, I've said it, like sucking us dry, or just like, what do those things look like?
Yeah. So what did you come up with? What are some of the character traits?
Depending on people smarter than myself. So there's a TED Talk that I listen to. Which, do you TED Talk? I don't know if you TED Talk. Do you TED Talk?
Make TED Talks? No.
No.
Have I ever watched one? Probably once or twice.
Okay. I think, man.
That sounds like I don't need anybody else's help. I don't mean it. That's just not anything I do.
I was not implying. You know that I watch nerdy podcasts and that like ask questions and stuff. And so there's this one. I'll have to make sure that we have the link to this one in the bio of this. But it was this one psychologist, and she specializes in friendships and relationships. And so what she did was like, I think it was like 5. Let me see what I've got. 5 signs of an unhealthy friendship or an unhealthy relationship. So in her TED Talk, I'll speed through them really quick. She said, here are 5 signs for an unhealthy friendship. They can be super intense. They can be super exclusive, super jealous, belittling, and they are a roller coaster of emotional extremes.
Okay.
And so there you go.
I would agree with all
so
that. But what do you mean by intense? Like, was that the word that she used, or that's your word?
Yeah. Let me make sure. Yeah. She labeled it as intensity. And whenever I was talking with teenagers, I said, it just feels really intense. So now, is there anything wrong with being emotionally invested in the relationship?
Yeah. That's why I'm questioning like what exactly she means, because I'm like, I have intense feelings for my wife. And is that not good? I think that's a good thing.
And I've got like good, intense, like I love some of my guy friends and the people that I want to be with. And so like, what kind of levels are we talking about?
What are we talking about with intensity?
Like if I'm like, hey, we're going to go hang out with Marshall, and I'm like Will Ferrell from Elf, like, oh yes, yes. I'm sorry if I just blew out your ears. But is that bad? I mean, I don't necessarily think so, but I think that those emotions can kind of shift into overdrive something that's a little bit too overwhelming.
Okay.
So, I mean, you just ask yourself, how many texts or how many, Snapchats or how many Instagram DMs are like, or calls are like appropriate from a friend. And I think we might each say something different. Like in a 24-hour period, what would I consider of like appropriate? And so sometimes they could just be texting you or DMing you all the time and stuff. And you're like, whoa, this like, we've jumped into the deep end very, very quickly. Yeah. And it's like, just became friends, but I feel like we're like so much deeper than we are. And like, we're getting really intense with something like that. And I feel like this is more in relationships than it really is in friendships. But let's just like use you and I, like if I'm texting you, and you don't text back in like a minute, I'm like, hey, did you get my last message? Where are you? What are you doing? Yeah. Like, why aren't you responding to my messages? And sometimes that can be in jest, like you and I just being ridiculous. Yeah. And sometimes it's like, nah, man, like I'm just being super intense. Right. And something like that can be a little bit scary, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. So, just ask yourself, in friendships, like, do you feel comfortable? Mm-hmm. Like, do you feel like the intensity is at a right level?
Yeah.
If you're both Will Ferrell and Elf going, yes, okay, maybe that's
acceptable. Yeah.
But just I think it's good to ask yourself, like, do I have space to breathe? Do I feel comfortable? And we shouldn't be thinking like, whoa, like, calm down, dude. Like, we're just like grabbing lunch. Like, don't send me 20 texts about grabbing lunch and stuff too. So, super intense. The next one was like super exclusive, which you don't have any questions about that.
No, that makes sense. Both in a dating relationship and in a friendship. Being like, you're not allowed to hang out with anybody else or talk to anybody else. Or maybe I choose to do that on my own.
Yeah.
Like, I am going to cut other people out of my life because I want to focus so much on this person.
Yeah.
That's unhealthy.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I feel like in today's day and age, it isn't like, it would be so funny if you have an adult friend that's like, you're my only friend. And like, don't hang out with anybody else. You and I are friendship exclusive.
So this makes me think of, this isn't my story. I had a youth group kid who, now she's an adult, has kids of her own. That's how long ago this was. But she was talking about, we were talking about friendships one time in the youth group. And she was talking about when she was in elementary school. And I'm saying like second grade or something like that. And she had a friend who like made her at recess time, like told her whether like, you're only going to play with me. And she was like, okay. And then there would be a day where that particular friend was like, okay, I'm going to go play with these people over here, but you're not allowed to. You have to stay over here. And made her, without like physically doing it, just made her stay by this tree on the playground. And did that like day after day. And she would... We were laughing so hard. I know, because she would talk to the tree. She named the tree. The tree was her friend because she had because that kind of thing. Because this, so to your point, that's what it makes me think of with exclusive. Like, as one person, or maybe both of you, but at least one person's like, no, it's just us.
Yeah.
And no one else. And we spend all of our time together, and we don't ever communicate with anybody else, and don't ever connect with anybody else. That's unhealthy for sure.
Yeah, and like to your point, like that happens as kids. It surely doesn't happen as adults, right? But I think it does.
For sure.
I think it really does happen with adults.
Sure.
I think it happens. I think you can see it really clearly in relationships where all of a sudden somebody starts dating somebody, and it's like they're no longer friends with anybody. Mm-hmm. It's just they're friends with just them. And kind of like I said, whenever you're on an island by yourself, that could be by yourself with just one other person. Mm-hmm. That can, whether you put yourself there or not, that can be a really scary spot. So, it's normal to want to spend time with friends, but whenever this friend or maybe even this relationship starts pulling you away from other meaningful friendships and relationships, mm-hmm. And then maybe even talking bad about them, it might not be like, hey, you and I are friends and like, you're only going to be my friend. Maybe you do it a little bit more subtle way of like, man, like, this other guy, he kind of sucks. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Like, and it could be somebody that's your friend. Mm-hmm. And like, I don't understand like why you hang out with them. Can you like, and it's kind of like undermining it's other friendships. Yeah, it's manipulating.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I'm undermining your friendships to be like, yeah, because I'm the friendship that you really want to have. Like, it is little, and so what real friends
going, don't stretch my shirt.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, man. Real friends don't do that. I just pulled on his shirt. If you're
real friends don't mess up other people's clothing.
That's actually point number 3. No, but real friendships don't demand that you're just friends with them, because healthy friendships have independence and they're dynamic, mm-hmm. And the realization of like, you don't just need Christy, your wife, as a very, very close friend. You mm-hmm. need other people that are also mm-hmm. like pouring into you, and that you're pouring into others, and those kinds of things, because those kinds of things carry into marriage. Those those friendships and those relationships, like we want to make sure that we have our independence, and we don't need to be super exclusive. Number 3, super jealous. I want to hear your take of like, do you get jealous whenever a close friend of yours hangs out, or maybe goes? I don't know. I feel like in the adult world, it's like, you're going like on like day trips or little vacations or something.
Yeah. Or you just, if somebody comes in the office and like, man, guess what, me and so-and-so did this weekend, and I'm like, I didn't get a phone call.
Yeah.
And I'll say I've probably done that with you and Lori, our administrative assistant, like y'all can be, I don't know, go get lunch and bring it back to the office or something. I'm like, am I,
Yeah, but that happens all the time in
yeah.
offices.
But for the most part, it's like I'm totally kidding around. But you can get that way,
Oh,
and
yeah.
like, and get envious of your level of friendship with somebody else, especially if I think that I'm the one that has the deepest relationship with you. And I mean, if you think about it, like Jesus even had to deal with that. We talk about his 12 closest friends, but there was one time when his friends came up to him like, Jesus, we saw somebody casting out demons and doing miracles in your name, and we told them to stop because they weren't one of us. Like,
Ooh.
they're not part of the circle. And so,
Tell them to stop. That's such a kid thing, man.
but it's what we do. But we do it as adults. I do remember sometimes as a kid, or definitely like, as a teenager and stuff, but even in my college days, I remember being like kind of, if my circle of friends did something and maybe I had like a class to go to, or maybe I had something else that was occupying my time, but I was still like really jealous that they got to experience something without me. And
Yeah.
if you are constantly second guessing that other person, like, why are you doing those things with them and not with me? That's a problem.
Yeah.
That's because self-centeredness and selfishness is at the core of that.
Yeah. And that's some honest assessment
Yeah.
of we need to really, like, why am I feeling these things, and assessing that relationship.
Right.
Because the opposite can be true too. If you're like, it's not normal for a friend to demand to know where you are and who you're with.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's not normal. And we
Right.
see that a lot more in relationships, dating relationships,
Yeah.
and sometimes even marriages and stuff too. It's not normal for me to be like constantly checking
Yeah.
on who you're with. And
But I would even say, forgive me for challenging your word, but
Go for
I
it.
would even say it's not necessarily abnormal, because I think it happens a lot. It's
Yeah.
not healthy. It's definitely
Yes.
not healthy.
Good distinction.
But it can become the norm for sure.
Yeah. Because remember, we talked about how friendship, if we're talking about meaningful community and friendship, this is a community that I've chosen.
Mhm.
You have a written contract for you and your wife. All
We do.
even if
Yeah.
it's like at its core, I mean, there's a legal process and stuff
Right.
too. And we believe that that's a contract, that transcends just what we do here on earth, but that's something that like God recognizes and
Mhm.
stuff too. But with friendships, we haven't signed a contract or anything like that. But sometimes, and like you said, it's normal, but it shouldn't be. Of like, yeah, we've signed a contract, and
We
that
have
means
our pact.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
means nothing with anybody else and
Right.
stuff. So real friendship, like if you feel like that somebody else is really possessive of you, or doesn't trust you and stuff, that's not real friendship.
Right.
I'll go through these last two. Belittling.
Yeah.
There's something, at least I know this is in every office, but I know it's in our office too.
Oh no.
That there's like, oh man, what do you say? I guess you want to call it belittling. We roast each other,
We do.
right?
Yeah.
We we'll
Yeah.
punch each other, get and us with Laurie and our children's minister Andrea as well.
Mhm.
But we just do little jabs and stuff like that. And there's a good part of us, being able to roast each other and stuff too, because there's some camaraderie that's made through those kinds of things.
Right.
But in a friendship, if it becomes like a regular form, a normal part of communication, of I'm always telling you like, man, that's a dumb shirt, you shouldn't have chosen that,
Yeah.
or these kinds of things, just belittling over and over again, those kinds of things can become a huge problem,
Mhm.
because I become okay with the way that you talk to
Right.
me, and I become okay with the way that you belittle me and say, it's just the way that things go.
Yeah, and part of that, we were talking about how like the jealousy and stuff is more self-centered with the belittling, especially if I'm accepting of that in this relationship. If I allow that, and just like, oh yeah, that's just the way he is. That's just the way she treats me, or what it is what it is kind of thing. There's some self-esteem issues there.
Yeah.
There's like, I'm not valuing myself very much if I'm allowing somebody to constantly tear me down. And we've already mentioned verses in other episodes of this of what God calls us to as far as being encouragers and not saying hateful things that actually tear down, but say things that build each other up.
Yeah.
But we can get to the point where we just accept it. This is what it is. I mean, you do see it in marriages too. I mean, you'll see a spouse, really just insult their spouse in a room full of other people and kind of laugh
and
about it, like,
unjust, yeah.
and like, that's not good. That's not healthy.
Yeah.
You know, you got to be really cautious about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Morgan and I have tried to make a very, very conscious effort, and I think we actually talked about it in marriage counseling stuff
Mm-hmm.
too, of that anytime that we're in a group, it's not that we say things that are untrue, but if I were to say anything to the whole group about my wife, let it be known that it will be positive.
Yeah.
It will be something that builds her up
Yeah.
and something that makes her look good.
Yeah.
Instead of like, oh man, like she's just always late, isn't she?
Yeah.
And you know, we're like, ah, ha, ha, ha.
Yeah.
But like, man, that can really work on you.
Oh, for sure.
And that can really like,
For
you know,
sure.
and so the thing would be like, you know, to tell that person like, man, I like this really bothers me. The unfortunate part of that is that many times a person like that would respond of like, just, man, you're just being too sensitive.
Yeah. Get over it.
Get over, like, it's not like, just take a joke,
Yeah.
man. Like, it's not
Yeah.
a big deal. But to your point, it seems obvious, but man, good friends build each other up.
Yeah.
They don't tear each other down.
So, if I can throw another scripture in here,
Go.
I don't, this is terrible. I don't know I always have to look up the exact verse. It's in the book of Proverbs. I know this for sure.
That's a
And
book of
it's-
friendship, by the way.
Yeah. And Solomon says, he uses this analogy. He says, like a madman shooting flaming arrows is the one who insults his friends and then says, I was only joking. And that got pointed out to me when I was younger because that was one of my catchphrases. I did that a lot. I just ripping people like, just kidding. And like, you think about you're just a crazy person with you're shooting flaming arrows in the air.
And not
You
just
don't
arrows,
even know.
flaming arrows.
Flaming arrows.
Like,
They're going to do long lasting damage, but you have no control over that. And that's what our words can do, you know? And if I'm in this relationship, whether it's a dating relationship, friendship, whatever, where I'm constantly tearing you down, I have control over my words, but if I'm just randomly just shooting things out, I don't control what kind of damage that does.
yeah. Well, that's what James says about the tongue.
Yeah.
You say these things, and it's a small spark that creates a huge
Yeah,
fire.
yeah,
And all
that's
of a
right.
sudden, you look around, and there's tons of people that don't want to be your friend.
Right.
Ouch.
Yeah.
You rectified those problems, yeah.
I'm trying to improve. It's a work in progress.
Last thing I'm thinking is the emotional extremes.
Mm-hmm.
You like roller coasters?
I do.
I also like roller coasters.
Yeah.
I feel like roller coaster friendships, I would like or dislike more, and I feel like I can think of things too. I can think of things too.
Mhm.
Woo-hoo-hoo. I need a little bit more of this coffee. So in your friendships, you got really, really high highs
Mm-hmm.
and really, really, really low lows.
Mm-hmm.
So there can be like hateful and hurtful comments of like, man, like and it's the arrows that you're talking about. Man, like you're worthless. I don't even know why we're friends.
Yeah.
And you just you say
Yeah.
those things, and man, those things can happen whenever you're having arguments and stuff like that. But then they apologize and they promise it'll never happen again. And be
Yeah.
like, no, like you're the one. Like I feel like it's a relationship. You're the one for me. Like you're the only friend that I have.
Yeah.
Like, you know, these kinds of things. But that's unhealthy, and honestly, it just can be really, really dangerous.
Yeah.
It can
Did
be
you
really
ever see the movie? So dumb it popped in my head. The movie Happy Gilmore.
Oh yeah.
When Adam Sandler's the golfer, and like at the very beginning, like that's one of the things he talks about is just the extremes in his own emotions. And he's like, his girlfriend's breaking up with him, and she walks out of the apartment, and he's yelling at her, and then she gets downstairs, and he gets on the intercom. He's like, "I'm sorry, baby, I didn't mean that." And then, you know, he yells through the intercom again. He's like, "I'm sorry, baby, I did," you know, just like that whole back and forth.
Why?
But being in a relationship with somebody like that, that's constantly those highs and lows, can be exhausting.
Yeah.
You know?
And there should be some predictability. I feel like that there should be like a foundational steady state
Yeah.
of like, man, it's okay for us to get frustrated and for us to think that we're not going to get frustrated with our friends or
Sure.
upset or even a little bit of
Or
jealous
have
and
the
stuff,
really
too.
big highs too. There's
Yeah.
going to be stuff to celebrate more
Yeah.
than other parts of our relationship.
But there's a steady state
Yeah.
that we can come
There's
to.
a baseline.
Yeah, it's where it's like, okay, this is the norm though, right? Because we're
Yeah.
walking through life, so it's hard to figure out that.
Yeah.
So we need to be able to, get real help with those kinds of friends, and I think it takes other people being able to point those things out. And those
Mhm.
relationships can be really manipulating. Of I hate you. I don't even know why we're friends. And like, nah, come on, baby.
Yeah.
Like it's fine. It's fine. All good. And that's really, really scary. But friendships are always constant, have a steady state, and they have, I think, love would be. Remember, that's what we talked about last week. The Hebrew word for love is aheb,
Yes.
aheb, and it's this special form of love. And I think that needs to be the steady state.
Right. coupled with, I would attach to that respect.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a steady state of, even when I'm upset with you, or even if we're like really celebrating, we have this core thing where I respect who you are. I respect your talents and gifts and abilities. I respect just you as a human being. I see value in you, and that needs to be a part of that friendship, dating relationship, marriage, whatever it is.
Yeah, we need to have that.
Yeah, constantly be a part of it.
So hopefully that can help us kind of see with clear eyes, from a psychological standpoint, at least, like, here, some of these things that I need to be on the lookout for. But I'm even more interested in, okay, so once I recognize those things, what does that look like? If we're using the analogy of, well, we cultivate good friendships, we grow them, we fertilize them, we prune them, we keep them growing so they can become something that's beautiful and fruitful. So how do we weed out? Not like I'm gonna pick this friend, but like how do we make those things more healthy?
Yeah, I think just real quick, just some of the things off the top of my head. One is communicate, and I know Christy and I did you and Morgan's premarital counseling. We use that word a lot. Every premarital counseling situation that I'm in, that's the word that couples hear the most from me. Yeah, is communicate. We got to talk about it, and even as I say that, if my wife was sitting here right now, she'd be like, yeah, and you still need to work on that, because that's one of the things that I struggle with, especially when there's conflict or when things are unhealthy, of actually talking through that, with the other person. And like take dating relationships, man. When I was a teenager, if I was dating a girl and I was like, man, I don't want to date this girl anymore for whatever reason, I would never have a conversation about that. I would never talk to this girl that I'm dating and go, I think we need to break up, right? Because it was awkward and it was painful. I didn't want to hurt their feelings, So what I would do... So
just don't have the conversation.
I would ghost them. Now, you got to understand, this back in the days when we didn't have texts and all that kind of stuff. So when I mean ghost, I mean like walk past them in the same room and go sit somewhere else and just go radio silence on them.
That's incredible.
So that they would get really mad at me and... be like, well, I don't want to date him. And then it all kind of worked itself out. But then I wasn't the one that was hurting their feelings. I mean, I was, but I didn't have to have the awkward conversation.
You're a people pleaser.
That's so terrible. That's so unhealthy.
You're a people pleaser?
I totally am. But that's I would rather them be mad at me and want to break up than
you having a conversation.
Yeah. So anyway, with all these friendships, like there's something unhealthy, but you still want to maintain this relationship, at least to some level. You got to talk about it. Yep. You got to be like, hey, there's like, and use words like, man, when you say this, or when you do this, or this is what I'm feeling. And I think that gets made fun of because it's kind of become one of those things in our culture nowadays, like, oh, okay, here we go. Let's talk about our feelings. But I think we have to do that in our relationships to, and depending on how that person responds, that will let you know if you need to kind of weed this person out of your life or not. If it's a friendship or somebody that I'm dating, it's like, okay, I didn't realize I was doing that. Let me work on that. Or if they're like, man, shut up.
Yeah.
You know what? I think I've got my answer.
Yeah. No, I mean, in friendships, I think you're right. For some reason, there's like this weird, like, I can't, like, you hurt my feelings, but I can't really tell you about it.
Yeah.
Because like we're deep, but we're not like that deep. Like that's emotional. That's weird. And especially we're speaking from a male perspective. I know that males in particular have a harder time being like, hey, let's go get ribs for lunch today. And by the way, like that text that you sent, like it hurt my feelings.
It cut me to the core.
Yeah. Yeah. But the Bible's really clear. It's in Proverbs. Like you say, that wounds from a friend can be trusted.
Yes.
Not mortal wounds, like emotional mortal wounds of I'm going to tear you down.
Yeah.
But if a friend comes to you, I'm just going to be in the receiving role right now. If a friend comes to me and just says, I've had this happen a couple of times, and I'm so thankful for it. They said, listen, the things that you said or the way that you approached the situation or the way that you went radio silent in this way, that hurt me, that hurt us, that hurt the situation. And I need to be able to forgive you for that. I'm like, oh man, and feel defensive of it because it's criticism. Yeah. But how life-giving that a wound from a friend can be trusted.
Yeah, it is a wound. It hurts, but I can trust the motivation behind it and the heart behind it.
Yeah, that goes
For
back
sure.
to the criticism. It depends on who is giving
Yeah.
it and how much I trust them.
Yeah.
So communication, 100%.
Communication, big deal. And also, we talk about friendships and dating relationships, but definitely in a marriage relationship, man, you got to talk about that. We have too many couples that are just coexisting because they can't have those kind of conversations. The second thing that I think of is you got to set some boundaries. If this is a hurtful relationship that I'm in, then I need to set some boundaries. And there's an entire book that I recommend to people
What's it called?
Boundaries. That kind of helps from a biblical perspective. Like, here's how you kind of, set some parameters and just go, like, this is how much I'm going to allow this person to be this, this is how deep I'm going to allow this relationship to be, at least for now. This is how much I'm going to trust this person. The boundaries might shift, they might move, but I know for sure this is what I consider to be healthy in this relationship. And if you're going to go beyond that, then we need to do something different.
Yeah.
That's really vague talk, but it's, I'm not going to allow this person to talk down to me anymore. That's a boundary that I'm going to set, and we can communicate and we can talk, but I'm not going to allow myself to be in a position with you where you can rip on me and tell me how much I suck and all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to do that. That's a boundary that I'm going to set, and just kind of setting those kind of boundaries. And the thing that I think of, I don't know if this totally makes sense or not, but Jesus gave an analogy one time of saying, like, if a king's going to go to war, he's going to sit down first and decide, do I have enough troops to go to war? If somebody's going to build a tower, they're going to decide, do I have enough money to do that? I'm deciding ahead of time what my limitations are and what I can do.
Yeah.
And I need to do that with relationships too. And maybe I'm already in the relationship and maybe it's a little more difficult because now I'm going to have to set some boundaries while I'm in the middle of it. But still, that's a healthier way to deal with potentially a negative relationship. And if that person's like going to keep doing those things and breaking those boundaries, you weed that person out. Like, I don't need to be in this relationship anymore.
Yeah. It's almost fences. It's not that you're fencing them in. It's like, listen, this is what I believe to be appropriate and life-giving for me. And obviously every friend and every relationship is going to bust past those boundaries at some point and have to reel them back in and everything.
Right.
But you're talking something that's like, I've set these things. This is something that I've found consistent, and now I'm going to set those boundaries more.
But it's also setting boundaries for myself sometimes too. Like, I'm not going to put myself in a position to be hurtful to somebody else or to allow them to be hurtful to me. I'm like, we're not going to spend as much time anymore, or we're not going to talk about these particular topics, or we're, because I don't like who I become when I'm in that situation.
I like, there's some friends that I have that we have been vocal to each other and said, listen, we've said these words out loud. To preserve our friendship, I think that we should not talk about these two things.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's been pretty good since then, because we could get so hot, and just to know myself and to know the way that our two families operate and stuff. That's the way we want to preserve the friendship. And so we've set that boundary, and that's become healthy. Yeah.
And you can do that with family. You can do that with friendships, whatever. And then the last thing that I would say is sometimes you got to get a little bit drastic. Like, we do need to weed some people out of our lives sometimes because it is so unhealthy. And again, Jesus talks one time, now he's talking about like sin and temptation. He's like, if your hand is causing you to sin, cut it off. Your eye is causing you to sin, gouge it out. And dang. I don't think that Jesus is talking about walking around maiming ourselves, but the principle is, like, don't keep doing something that is obviously a problem, and don't keep allowing something to be in your life. Like, I mean, that's the whole thing with, people with frostbite or gangrene or whatever. You cut that thing off, man, because it's going to continue to grow and spread and make other parts of your life unhealthy. Same thing with this particular relationship. Now, it's easier to do. I say easier with a friendship or a dating relationship. Marriage is more difficult, but even with a marriage, I'm not saying you should run out and get a divorce because things are bad, but you get drastic. Like, we need to go to some therapy, or we need to sit down. Like, let's read some books. Let's do something different than what we currently are doing. And the same thing with friendships and relationships. Like, something's got to change, and it's got to be drastic. I can't just be like, this is a bad day, and I wish things hadn't gone that way, but it'll be better next time. Like, no, we have a track record of things going this direction. Let's let's change that, or let's be done with it.
Yeah.
And just, sometimes you got to cut it off.
Yeah, and I know that might be difficult because I know
It's
that
kind of harsh.
Well, lots of people, the very negative relationships that I have are the people that are on my team that we've got to do work and stuff with.
Right.
And so, I mean, I think that's when you can not get HR involved in a way that is like really negative and stuff. But I think having a conversation, this is the way that Jesus lays it out in Matthew of like, listen, you go to that person first.
Right.
And you try and establish that boundary. You communicate. You communicate. You do all that stuff.
Yep.
And then from there, and I mean, he's talking about like, just negative things in the church and stuff too. I think it applies to friendships and everything too. But then you take that to one other trusted person, which I mean, could be your HR rep,
right?
And be like, listen, like we are trying to accomplish these tasks, and we are just unable to. And so you help us establish a way to make this right and to make this good. And then if we need to involve other people and stuff too, but it starts with that person,
right?
And then being able to bring even a mediator in or something to be able to work on that.
Yeah.
And that can be tough in the workplace. I know how that goes, to be able to do that and do that well.
Yeah. But even just the drastic, like this, I may need to stop dating this person. I may need to stop being friends with this person. If it's a work relationship, I may not be able to completely, remove that person from my life, but I may need to get a little bit more, blunt and a little bit more direct and set some harder boundaries and things like that. And that's hurtful. But it's necessary in order to maintain my own mental and emotional health and even my spiritual health. I mean, unhealthy relationships affect every aspect of our lives.
Yeah.
How
many times you go home and thinking about the conversation that was just had.
Right.
And it weighs on you.
Produces more stress and anxiety and all those kind of things. So we hope this has been, somewhat helpful for you guys. I hope that God is blessing you with some good relationships, and if that's been a struggle for a while, maybe there's some things over these last few episodes that have been helpful with that, and then especially today, if there's been an unhealthy connection that you've had in your life, maybe this has helped a little bit. Just next steps. What do I need to do next in dealing with this?
Yeah. So I think we're going to take a little break, at least in real time. We're moving into spring break of 2024. So I think we're going to take a little break and resume with a frequently asked question.
Yes.
This week. So talking about meaningful community and what that looks like, we're going to talk about a frequently asked question, whether that comes to culture, Bible,
right,
Jesus,
a whole bunch of different things.
All those different things.
Yeah,
so looking forward to that.
Yeah. So thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you next time.